press the Let's Go Live button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. And I didn't even have my slides open before I hit the Let's Go Live button, which is, very unlike me. Usually I'm a little bit more prepared than that, but it is functional, which is good. And it looks like we're alive, which is also good, which means we can go ahead and get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny and a little bit cold Scottsdale, Arizona. Today we're talking about Russia invading Ukraine. We're talking about President Putin, who is from Russia, who is responding to this. We're going to go through a lot of detail today. We're going to start by sort of rewinding the clock back to late last night. If you were like me, you were probably, finishing the show, your YouTube show, going home and sort of unwinding a little bit, thinking that maybe World War III was going to be happening. You pull up your Twitter account and you go, oh, yeah, it actually looks like, Russia is fully invading Ukraine. And all night long, there were just people posting imagery and videos and photographs of, a lot of the carnage, some of the war porn as it is, that was happening late last night, early into the morning over there. And so we're going to go through some of that. We're going to see exactly what Putin said he was going to do. He went to his parliament and said, look, we need permission for this special operation. And then he made an announcement and then boom, he went into it. So we're going to break down what happened there. We're going to check in with some Ukrainian members of parliament. A guy named Alexey Goncharenko is calling Putin the modern day Hitler. And so a lot of those comparisons, I'm sure, will be thrown around here very soon, and maybe with good cause. We don't know. We're also going to check and see what the Ukrainian President Zelenksy has to say about it, because he confirmed it when it was all happening last night. And so, the whole world for a long time has been saying this was going to happen. The Biden administration largely has been beating this drum. Here it is. And now we're wondering, well, what's the response? There was a lot of threats of sanctions and really serious repercussions if old Putin were deciding to do something like this. And he did. And so now people were wanting to hear from the president, President Joe Biden, the man with all of these years of diplomacy experience as a senator, as somebody who's been a bureaucrat forever. People are wondering, well, what's he going to do about it? Well, guess what? He woke up today and gave a speech, and he came out and talked about it. And so we are going to break this down. Guess what the solution is going to be? Oh, yeah, more sanctions. And the media doesn't really buy it either. We've got several clips, several questions that Joe Biden took came from the media, and they're all scratching their heads. They're saying, you said that sanctions were going to be serious and he did it anyways, or do you have another plan, or are we just kind of done on this, or what? And so Joe Biden was out. We're going to go through his press conference. We're going to listen in as other people are sort of encouraging him maybe to promote a counterattack involving cyber warfare, a little cyber attack action coming out of the White House. And so we're going to explore those topics. And then in our last segment, Putin responded. So he actually came out today, and I've got, I think, a 4-minute clip. Most of the stuff I clipped today, I have not even listened to because I was sort of really compressed for show today. Compressed for time for show prep, you can see. And we're going to go through it together. And so I'm not even sure what he said in that clip, but we will make that determination together. And so, boy, do we've got a lot to get to. If you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. They are chatting away over there. There's a thread. We have a comments thread, which is public, by the way. So if you go over to YouTube, it's free. You can check out the comment thread. You just can't comment on it unless you're a supporter, but you can read it. There's a chat taking place over there. If you're a supporter on Locals, you also get access to the Telegram secret community. So a lot of good reasons to support us there. Also, if you're a member on YouTube, which is another great place to support the show, you get access to these gifts. You get access to the honorary Canadian flag for the Freedom Convoy, which is still percolating here in the United States. You get badges to show how long you've been a supporter. Appreciate that. Tiering things up to 2 years in badges. And so, of course, I very much appreciate it if you hit that join button or you join us on Locals. Either way, it's right next to the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and it's very much appreciated. I said that like 7 times. All right, enough already. Okay, so let's get into the news of the day. President Putin went to his parliament and decided that he was going to ask them for permission to do something like invade a country. TRT World Now on Twitter is saying that he actually went to the upper house of his parliament and asked for permission to use forces abroad. He said that they formally recognize these two Ukrainian regions. We talked about that in a prior video. And guess what happened? Well, they granted him formal authority to deploy Russia's armed forces abroad. And that took place February 23rd. So that was yesterday. Here we can see 12:09 a.m. is when TRT World Now got that. And then shortly after this announcement, guess what happened? Putin came out. Here is his announcements. Now, I think I'm going to have to translate this, but let's listen in. All right, so we'll turn the volume down. It says, circumstances require action. Donbass's people asked for help from Russia. And remember that remember that in a prior video, he had already come out and made the claim that they are part of the same territory. So here he says, according to the United Nations Charter, with the consent of the Russian Federation Council, that we ratified just 2 days ago in February, he says, our friendship and mutual aid with these two regions, I decided to conduct a special military operation. Its goal is the protection of people who during 8 years suffered from abuse and genocide under the Kiev regime, right? Blaming Ukraine. Whoever would try to stop us and create further threats to our country, to our people, should know that Russia's response will be immediate and lead you to such consequences that you have never faced in your history. What does that mean? We are ready for any outcome. Whoa! Unlike anything you've ever seen in history. Is he talking about nuclear weapons? Is he talking about a full global war? Did he just threaten to nuke the entire world? It's kind of what it sounded like to me. Consequences unlike any you have ever seen. So it's a pretty ominous statement. Now, Putin came out and delivered a big, longer statement than that. That was sort of the highlights of it. And right after that, right, we started to see all over Twitter, the raid started. We started to see the invasion engage well underway. Disclosed TV showed us this footage, said that air raid sirens are going off in Kiev, Ukraine's capital. Let's listen to this. So you can see a beautiful downtown area. The air sirens are going off. They are entering a state of emergency. We start to see aircraft flying in. Now, I'm not a military aircraft expert or a military expert in any way, shape, or form, but you can see here somebody's telling us that an Su-25 is spotted over this region. Here's what that looks like. I don't think there was any audio on this one, but right, these are sort of, military aircraft flying in at low altitude into sort of, residential areas. And certainly, people would be freaking out at that moment. Now, also saw that people were fleeing the country. There was, if you looked at the Google map, the traffic there, was just sort of a gridlock as people were fleeing to Poland and Romania and other parts. Another video came out from ELINT News, says another video of a cruise missile flying in Ukraine. Now, I think there's a profanity here. Yeah, I think there's a content warning on this one. So if you've got little ones, I think he drops the F-bomb because a missile is flying over his head. So here, brace yourself for that.
Russia has declared war on Ukraine. As soon as the declaration... There you go. Oh, fuck! That's a missile! That's a missile! That's a fucking missile!
That was one of those, like...
Holy shit! Russia has declared...
All right, so you can see, right, people are starting to get a little bit concerned about that. Air sirens going off. Putin just made that announcement. Missiles flying overhead. Aircraft flying at low altitude doesn't look good. New York Times is confirming. They've got some other image that came in, and this is kind of interesting. You can see this is from a different part, sort of in the southern region near Crimea. You can see these are the first images of Russian troops entering Ukraine, verified by the New York Times, which means, I guess, it means something, I guess. Footage captured by security cameras at the border crossing on Thursday morning show Russian military vehicles entering from Crimea. And so here is that region. Okay, we spent a lot of time talking about this region because this region was contested during the prior Biden administration when he was vice president with Obama back in 2014. We have the Crimean Peninsula here, and you can see the border between Ukraine and Russia is this one that I'm highlighting here in red. Kiev is right here, sort of up in the upper central capital here in the middle of Ukraine. And this is where this video, where that footage is coming from. Did I clip that? Yeah, here's another image of a lot of the battles that are taking place. And so you can see, according to this map, they have the Crimea sort of, highlighted in a contested shade. This is, it's not Ukraine, it's not Russia, it's sort of both. But you can see all of these different battles and shellings and, bombings and little skirmishes taking place all over the country. The footage that we're about to see is sort of down here in Crimea. Now, we don't know where it is, if it's down here, in this sort of juncture point between this region and Russia, or if they're already further in, sort of going from Crimea up into Ukraine, don't know. But here is what that footage looks like. And you can see it's just tanks, just like literal tanks just rolling down the street. So there's no audio on this one here, but this looks like it was security footage, State Border Guard Service, right in between. Like, this is like like a customs port. And so, when you drive from Arizona to California and you sort of have to stop and they say, do you have any illegal drugs in there? Like, it's one of those ports. And you just have one nation just rolling in all their armed services. All right, all their armed military gear rolling on in. Not even really facing any problems there. Did everybody leave? I don't know. So you can see what's happening. Now, we've got a couple more clips before we start to get into some reaction. Here, the Intel Crab, which is one of the best follows on Twitter, by the way. The Intel Crab is such a good follow, I can't recommend him enough. The Ukrainian city of Lutsk was targeted moments ago by Russian airstrikes. Now, this is 100 kilometers away from the border with Poland. The furthest west strikes so far this morning. And remember, we've talked about this previously. The Donetsk region and the Lutsk region, these are two different, geographic areas that Putin just said, that's my land now. Or those are independent territories now. They want our help, and so we're going to give it to them. But when we were doing that analysis, we were looking at the demographics and we were asking ourselves, how far does the Russian, people kind of go into Ukraine? And it goes pretty far. And so the next question, of course, is how far west is Putin going to go? Here is what one of those bombings or airstrikes looks like.
Чуєш, тільки що Єбать! Це аеродром, походу.
Це не аеродром, аеродром там. У нас тут пиздец.
All right, as you can see, bombs and airstrikes going off. Here's another one. This is the speaker of the Ukraine Parliament. His name is Stefanchuk. He's filmed fleeing Kiev with his family. Can't blame the guy, right? So here he is, just loading up. Everybody's packing up and getting out of there. All right, so he's loading up his car. Here is Kiev's mayor urging citizens to stay home after explosions are heard in the capital.
Cars are moving around very fastly. There were a couple of alarms sounding, so there is definitely explosions going on in Kiev.
We heard from the Russian representative to the UN Security Council saying that this is not a full-scale war. This is purely a special operation in eastern Ukraine. But from your eyewitness experience there, that is certainly not the case.
Yeah.
Yes, what we need to identify is what is actually going on, because we've heard the warnings from multiple Western allies of Ukraine stating that Russia would provoke false flag attacks, and that many of the Ukrainian people here are feeling exactly what I am feeling right now. There's a very big sense of uncertainty. We've heard the lines coming through by the Secretary General Stoltenberg that he did believe a full-scale invasion was being prepared by the Russian Federation, in particular Vladimir Putin. So in terms of what is going on right now, only Vladimir Putin has that answer, and why he has chosen to go the path he has done.
All right, so you can see here, right, this is another summation by, I think this came over from the Financial Times. you can see sort of this region here, a lot of activity. We see in this little explosion graphic, it says this is a reported attack. And so you've got the capital city of Kyiv. We've got, here in the Luhansk region, I can't pronounce all these names, but you can see them, right? Odessa, Kulabakino, actual looks like skirmishes. We've got another marker about new presence detected. And so you can see sort of these red diamonds are not inside the old Ukraine border, but we can see they're sort of right up top, right in Belarus. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like different markers there, maybe 10 or a dozen here, right near sort of the northern border, which would right be above those two contested regions, down in Crimea, and so sort of surrounding the whole area. Here was another interesting clip. This is a woman. She went up to one of the guards there. Oh, I don't think I clipped that one. I don't think I added it in there. Yeah, I didn't, so we're going to have to skip it. But here is another clip. Now, so we have been watching all of this sort of piling up of forces all around Ukraine and inside Ukraine now. And Fox News had this guy on yesterday. He's somebody from the parliament over from Ukraine. He says, Putin is really like the modern day Hitler. Listen to this guy.
Did you anticipate that this first wave from Russia would be so comprehensive, not just in one spot or just on the fringes of the border, but much more widespread?
Certainly nobody knew it, but there were American intelligence telling this to the world, and we appreciate this. So unfortunately, it happened this way. I don't know what to add. Putin is mad. He is Hitler of 21st century. He should be stopped now, or he will go forward. He will not stop on Ukraine. Sorry, but he will not stop.
Okay, right, and that's kind of the question that's on everybody's mind right now. When these videos are playing, I'm sort of watching the chat and I'm sort of gauging everybody's reaction to this whole thing and watching this. And, I'm seeing a lot of the same split that I think we see sort of on the conservative side of American politics. You've got this sort of the traditional neocons, right? The warmongers like Lindsey Graham, the guys who never saw a war that they didn't want to be a part of. And you've got the other people who are sort of asking themselves, Ukraine, this sounds terrible. This is an awful thing. Everything that is happening is horrendous. Putin is a dictator. He's a maniac, and he is, a monster. But what is America doing involved in this kerfuffle here, battling back dictatorships when we happen to have a lot of dictator-like tendencies here at home that we're still working through? So, a lot of these questions are sort of bouncing around everybody's mind. But another question is, what if this guy's right? What if Putin is like sensing that the world is realigned? Sort of against the West. And in many cases, maybe it is. I mean, we've been watching what NATO has been doing over these last months. Basically, their word has been completely feckless. Russia didn't care at all. They just said, that's great. Sanction us all you want. We're going to roll right on in there. And so now you have, let's say, Russia, China, you've got a couple of these countries that decide that they're going to pal up. They can make a stronger Axis united, and they see a bunch of flailing, quisling idiots leading the West, everywhere you turn. Right. And everybody's killing themselves over lockdowns and masks and pronouns and all sorts of, really, really sort of, non-consequential things, in my humble opinion, on many of these issues, right, are sort of or are less important than what's happening with when people are getting fired from their jobs, for example. And so, they take a look at this and they see a weak old leader who can't even hardly, finish a speech. Maybe there is some thought there, right? Maybe what happens if he is, in fact, somebody who is Hitler-esque? Who knows? And so this parliamentarian is asking some very good questions about that. Now, out of Ukraine, they're calling it a full-scale invasion. So this is Dmytro Kuleba. And Dmytro Kuleba is somebody who is their defense minister in Ukraine, says Putin has launched a full-scale invasion. Peaceful Ukrainian cities are under strike. This is a war of aggression. Ukraine will defend itself and will win, he says. The world can and must stop Putin. The time to act is now. We'll see about that. We'll see, right? Now, here is what the Ukraine military has done. They have some pictures over here from TRT World Now. And let's go through some of these. In pictures, Russian tanks and armored vehicles are moving through the separatist-controlled cities of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. And you can see, right, some pretty heavy artillery there, some pretty, heavy equipment. Here is another tweet. Ukraine's military says our air defense shot down a Russian plane in the east. Attacks taking place on all fronts, including Crimea. We're being attacked with artillery, heavy equipment, and small arms, right? Sort of a summation of what Ukraine is saying. Here, I've got a clip from Ukraine President Zelensky. Now, this is a clip in I don't know what they speak, in his language, his native language. Here, he's saying Russia is attacking the military installations across the country. He says Ukraine is launching its own defensive measures. He's urging Ukrainians to stay calm and stay home, and then says he spoke with Biden. Now, you're not going to be able to understand this unless you speak this language, but you can just sort of watch his facial expressions, right? He's pretty fired up. His country's under
Шановні
attack.
громадяни України, сьогодні вранці президент Путін оголосив проведення спеціальної військової операції на Донбасі. Росія здійснила удари по нашій військовій інфраструктурі та по нашим прикордонникам, прикордонним загонам. В багатьох містах України було чутно вибухи. Ми вводимо воєнний стан на всій території нашої держави. Хвилину тому я провів розмову з президентом Байденом. Сполучені Штати Америки вже почали гуртувати міжнародну підтримку. Сьогодні.
All right, so you can see, right, you heard him say Biden in there. That's all you needed to hear. So apparently Biden woke up and took the phone call. Now, here is another statement from the defense minister, says the world must act immediately. Future of Europe and the world is at stake. And this person has a to-do list. Says devastating sanctions must be enacted on Russia now, including on SWIFT. So they want them pulled out of the world's sort of financial system. Says fully isolate Russia by all means in all formats. Says weapons and equipment for Ukraine. Arm us up. We need financial assistance. We need humanitarian assistance. We are under full-scale invasion. And so when you woke up this morning in Ukraine, this was that clip that I mentioned earlier that I thought I didn't add, but I did add it. We see a Russian soldier here. We see a Ukrainian woman who's going to go up and confront him. Now listen to this. Now she's telling him, she's scolding him. Apparently she's telling him to get the F out of her land. Yeah, so I skipped over the Daily Mail article that was a lead into that, but she was apparently scolding that Russian soldier and saying, you know, what are you doing here? Get out of here. And that is not Canada. That took place in Ukraine, apparently. The Russian soldiers were there. I know it looks a lot like that clip that we were talking about of the Ottawa police officers going and smacking phones out of Canadian citizens' hands, but that was in Canada. This is in Ukraine. I know it's not far off from one another, but this is in fact in another dictatorship, which is completely, the other side of the world. Here now, a little more troubling news. In addition to the stuff that we've already covered, apparently the Russians have taken over Chernobyl. Here, pictured is a Russian T-72 tank. It's sitting in front of the main reactor at Chernobyl after Putin's forces seized it in a fierce battle. And the condition of the nuclear storage facilities are unknown. Now, of course, Russia already has nukes, and, there's like no strategy, right? Are they racing into Chernobyl to get nuclear materials to build a bomb? No, they've got plenty of those. They don't need that. But they are, in control of this area. Again, you can see here's another photograph. Russian armored vehicles park on roads near the Chernobyl plant amid fears that damage to the facility could cause a radiation leak that would blanket Europe in fallout. Ugh. More nuclear fallout? Great. Here is this person informing us, yeah, Russians got Chernobyl.
Вимушений повідомити, що станом на зараз Чорнобильська зона, ДАЗ, так звана зона відчуження, і всі об'єкти Чорнобильської АЕС взяті під контроль
Chernobyl power plants are under control of Russian armed groups. According to the management,
постраждалих за даними керівництва Чорнобильської
of the Chernobyl exclusion zone and the Chernobyl nuclear reactor plant, there have been no casualties. The information will be updated.
Подальша інформація буде уточнюватись.
All right, so you can see that is happening. Now, this is another image. Apparently, Russian soldiers are raising a flag over the hydroelectric power plant. Apparently, they took that over with helicopters. And then they went and raised the Russian flag. Wow. So now other headlines are saying, yeah, I mean, you know, Ukraine, if this continues on at this pace, many people are speculating that Ukraine is going to be seized by the weekend. Okay, I'm already seeing headlines about that on Twitter and elsewhere right before I sat down and started the show. And so the big question, of course, is what's the world going to do if Putin is indeed Hitler 2.0, right? A lot of appeasement went back on in World War II in that era. A lot of people are saying that, you know, maybe something could have been done sooner and the whole course of history would have been changed. And so nobody wants to make that same mistake again. Nobody wants Putin to just kind of, you know, get started here. We have a bunch of feckless, weak politicians, you know, people who might be in our current White House who think that they're very strong and diplomatic and that they've got a plan to stop this continual aggression. But what are they going to do about it? So, in fact, you know what, folks? Fortunately, here in the United States, Joe Biden's in charge. If you're not familiar with this, here in the United States Senate, our senators like to fashion themselves as foreign diplomats, like they've got all this foreign experience because they go on vacation to different countries. Okay. And Joe Biden is somebody who's been in the Senate for, I think, 137 years. And so he's got a lot of experience going on a lot of vacations. And in fact, he's got a lot of ties to Ukraine. He's in that clip saying that he made a statement to them, gave him a threat. In other words, if you don't give me what I want, you're not going to get your billion in aid. Turns out it all went according to his plan. But I digress. We could go down a lot of rabbit holes here. My big point that I want to stick to is Joe Biden has talked about this before. He said when he was running for president, when he was campaigning, that he knew exactly how to handle old Pooty Poo over there based on his experiences 37 years in the Senate or government or wherever he's at. Here is Joe Biden on the campaign trail giving old Putin the warning.
Because Putin knows if I am president of the United States, his days of tyranny and trying to intimidate the United States and those in Eastern Europe are over.
Are they?
I'm going to stand up to him.
Really?
He's a bully, just like the president. Oh. And I know he doesn't want me to be president. But to tell you what, when I'm president, things are going to change.
Okay. All right, Joe. So Joe said things are going to change, and he knows how to deal with him, and Putin doesn't want him to be president because there are going to be consequences. All right. Now, here is what Joe Biden said yesterday before Ukraine was taken over. He said this. Are my slides out of order? Hang on. Well, let's see here. What do we have here? I don't know what this clip is. Let's watch this one. This looks like from Fox. We know that Joe Biden is going to be very harsh with Putin. Let's see what Peter Doocy said happened last night as soon as the shelling started in Ukraine.
Good evening, Shannon, here on the North Lawn of the White House, where we don't believe the president is in the Oval Office because when he is in the Oval Office, they station a Marine sentry outside the West Wing. We have not seen that late this evening, but 2 minutes ago, the press secretary told us online the president was briefed on a secure call this evening by Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, Chairman Milley, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan about the ongoing attack on Ukraine by Russian military forces.
Jake Sullivan? We're totally screwed. The war's over. Russia won. Jake Sullivan was in the room, along with Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin and Joe Biden. Oh no. United States is in trouble, folks, because those four characters, they brought you the season 1 called Afghanistan. Wasn't a good season at all. Like a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Nobody was happy with that production. Here we can see that even Donald Trump was wondering, where is Joe Biden? And in fact, many people on Twitter last night were going hog wild with this. They were saying, you know, prove that the president's awake. Somebody go wake him up. Is he actually there? And he actually tweeted something, right? Or somebody tweeted something, because I don't even show he knows what a Twitter is. But somebody posted something from the presidential account, and like every comment was like, "Are you awake? Somebody prove he's awake. Let's see a picture. Timestamp that. Wake up," because this was all happening late at night. And so Donald Trump, of course, was up because he's up. He's always up, and we miss that about this sort of way of governance. Maybe it would be nice to see a tweet from time to time. Here is what Benny is telling us. Donald Trump showed up on the Laura Ingraham's show. This is what he had to say.
President Biden is monitoring the situation at the White House now and is going to talk to the G7 tomorrow. Tomorrow? And he's going to talk to the nation at some point tomorrow as well. Your reaction to that approach?
I don't think he's monitoring. I think he's probably sleeping right now.
Yeah.
But this is
Yeah, probably true. And so Donald Trump went on, and so, a lot of people were asking themselves about that. Here is what Joe Biden had to say in 2020. Okay, so here, February 22nd, 2020. Let's see here. He says, Vladimir Putin doesn't want me to be president. He doesn't want me to be our nominee. If you're wondering why, it's because I'm the only person in this field who's ever gone toe-to-toe with him. All right, so that's going to be our president. And he's going to, I guess, detail what the plan is. So let's hear from Joe. Now, we have several clips from him. This clip was the one from yesterday. This is before the invasion took place. And so Joe Biden came out. He was addressing the American people. I think this was from yesterday. I'm pretty sure it was. Here he is telling us that because of this new war that we're going to basically be in, that there may be some consequences and Americans are just going to have to kind of eat it. Here's what that sounds like.
Defending freedom will have cost.
What does that mean, defending freedom?
And here at home, we need to be honest about that. But as we do this, I'm going to take robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, not ours.
Okay, so that's yesterday. Now, a lot of people are asking so that's yesterday, okay? Talking sanction. We're going to make sure that they don't do this. Well, turns out they did it. He was warning us previously that there were going to be consequences. You know, this whole freedom isn't free thing that we keep hearing so much about. Well, we are sort of feeling like we're lacking in a lot of freedom here in the United States. We're paying the price for that. So a lot of people are asking, what are some of these consequences? Well, we're going to see. We learned earlier in the show that Putin was talking about consequences that the world has never seen before, right? And heed my words is essentially what he was saying. Are those the costs that he's talking about? Is he talking about Brent crude oil being up over $100? Which means gas prices continue to flail completely even further out of control, which means every single good that is transported on the back of a truck now costs more to ship, which means all of those costs are being passed down to everybody else, right? It's very serious consequences for people here in the United States, even though the blood and the lives being lost may be on the other side of the planet, right? There are global consequences to inept leadership. And so Joe Biden is now going to tell us, now that the invasion has begun in earnest, in full, what his plan is. He came out today, 1:45 Eastern time at the White House. And this is a 3-minute and 52-second clip. We're going to listen to as much as we can. Let's see what Joe Biden has to say, announcing another colossal failure of his diplomacy. Now, this is all Putin's fault, just like Afghanistan was all somebody else's fault, Trump's fault, whatever. He is going to be detailing what his vision, I guess, for this global order is. Let's listen.
We've been transparent with the world. We've shared declassified evidence about Russia's plans and cyber attacks and false pretexts so that there could be no confusion or cover-up.
We're not confused.
What Putin was doing.
Never were confused.
Putin is the aggressor.
Got it.
Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
Okay.
Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what can be exported to Russia. This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time. We have purposely designed these sanctions to maximize the long-term impact on Russia and to minimize the impact on the United States and our allies.
All right, so we're going to pause on that real quick, okay? So I have a whole series of slides that we're about to get to where, okay, sanctions, yes. Economic hardship, okay, yes. Whether they are national or individualistic, whether we're going to stop exporting them certain things, right? We spent some time earlier this week. We did a live stream just for locals and YouTube supporters on a private stream. The link is over on locals or on YouTube in the community section, where we were talking about sort of what Russian television was saying about all this, right? They were saying, and they actually talked about cheese. They said, we created our own cheese industry here in Russia, just in case they decide to cut us off from the rest of the world. And one of the other hosts on Russian TV was saying, yeah, I mean, we have good cheese here, but I still like that Italian cheese. I like that Parmesan cheese. And so some stuff is working, some stuff is not working. And so we're asking ourselves, right, as our leaders, as Joe Biden just came out and said, if you want to protect freedom, there may be some consequences and there may be some costs associated with that. That same argument is happening over there in Russia. And so as we're going to go through, part of my question and my curiosity was, what sort of anti-fragility do they have? What sort of resources make them strong and can fortify them against sanctions? Are they doing business in the dollar? Do they have enough food? Are they able to keep warm, energy and those types of things? Can they hole up for a certain period of time while they continue to cause enough hardship outside of their sphere that it becomes problematic for the rest of the world? Can they make it hurt exterior more than it hurts interior? I don't know. Here is Joe Biden, though, continuing on with his statement. We're going to come back to that. We're going to look at oil. We're going to look at wheat. We're going to look at other economic factors. And Joe Biden is saying he's going to put the pressure on that. Let's listen back to Joe.
The United States is not doing this alone. For months, we've been building a coalition of partners representing well more than half the global economy. 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, to amplify the joint impact of our response.
Okay.
I just spoke with the G7 leaders this morning, and we're in full and total agreement.
Great.
We will limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen.
Okay, so listen to that, right? Limit their business to do business in dollars, pounds, euro, and yen. We're going to look at that. We're going to see what type of dollars they're dumping into. Watch.
To be part of the global economy. We'll limit their ability to do that. We're going to stunt the ability to finance and grow the Russian military. We're going to impose major, and we're going to impair their ability to compete in high-tech 21st century economy. We've already seen the impact of our actions on Russia's currency and the ruble, which early today hit its weakest level ever in history.
Great.
The Russia stock market plunged today.
So
Russian government borrowing rates spiked by over 15%. In today's actions, we've now sanctioned Russian banks that together hold around $1 trillion in assets.
All right, we're going to look at all that, but man, he is really laboring through this, isn't he? I mean, and he looks just exhausted. Let's watch.
We've cut off Russia's largest bank, a bank that holds more than 1/3 of Russia's banking assets by itself. Cut it off from the U.S. financial system.
All right, we're going to talk about that.
We're also blocking 4 more major banks. That means every asset they have in America will be frozen. This includes VTB, the second largest bank in Russia, which has $250 billion.
That's not inconsequential. Okay, now we are going to see that Putin came out in the last segment of the show today. Putin came out and he has this sort of press conference or this meeting with all of his, I think, his oligarchs, right? The sort of the parliament. And he kind of has a talking to with them, right? And I haven't watched the full thing, but he's justifying what happened here. I'm guessing largely because many of these people don't want their $250 billion seized at all. So maybe that will have consequences. We'll see. Let's go back to Biden.
As promised, we're also adding the names to the list of Russian elites and their family members that were sanctioned as well. As I said on Tuesday, these are people who personally gain from the Kremlin's policies, and they should share in the pain. We will keep up this drumbeat of those designations against corrupt billionaires in the days ahead.
All right, so what's the end goal? So I guess the end goal would be to put enough pressure on these oligarchs that they're going to put enough pressure on Putin that Putin's going to what? Stop the aggression? I guess that's the strategy. Let's listen.
Tuesday, we stopped the Russian government from raising money from U.S. or European investors. Now we're going to apply the same restrictions to Russia's largest state-owned enterprises, companies with assets that exceed $1.4 trillion.
It's a lot.
Some of the most powerful impacts our actions will come over time as we squeeze Russia's access to finances and technology for strategic sectors of its economy and degrade its industrial capacity for years to come. Between our actions and those of our allies and partners, we estimate that we'll cut off more than half of Russia's high-tech imports.
All right.
It'll strike a blow to their ability to continue to modernize their military. It'll degrade their aerospace industry, including their space program. It'll hurt their ability to build ships, reducing their ability to compete economically. And it will be a major hit to Putin's long-term strategic ambitions.
All right, and so a big list of things they're going to do, and apparently it's going to impact some really serious infrastructure there in Russia, and we'll be, who knows, we'll see. We know that the Russians think that they're pretty robust, they're anti-fragile, they've got their own infrastructure, and they don't really need a lot of help. They also think that they've got a lot of energy that Europe needs, and they also have a pretty good kind of handhold relationship with the Chinese there. And so maybe they're a lot less concerned about what the Western countries like in Europe and the United States have to say about things, because they are sort of slipping away in terms of their virality. We can just leave it at that. Now, several questions come at Mr. Joe Biden, the president. You can see here he is just barely hanging on. And this question comes in from Ducey. Ducey over from Fox News is saying, Mr. President, did you underestimate old Putin? Did he get the better of you on this thing? You were saying for a long time that you had all these sanctions and you're going to do all this stuff to put the pressure on, and you made it all open and transparent. The world knows, the world sees it. And Putin just decided, I really see everything you're doing, don't even care, and just walked right on in. So did you underestimate him? Did you think that what you were doing was going to be consequential? Because it seems like your deterrence failed. Here's what Ducey said.
I'm sorry.
The next question is, did you underestimate Putin, and would you still describe him the way that you did in the summer as a worthy adversary?
At the time, I made it clear as an adversary, and I said he was worthy. I didn't underestimate him. And I've read most of everything he's written. Did you read I'm not being a wise guy. You heard the speech he made, almost an hour's worth of speech, is why he was going into Ukraine. He has much larger ambitions in Ukraine. He wants to, in fact, reestablish the former Soviet Union. That's what this is about. And I think that his ambitions are completely contrary to the place where the rest of the world has arrived.
You're confident that these devastating sanctions are going to be as devastating as Russian missiles and bullets and tanks?
Yes, Russian bullets, missiles, and tanks in Ukraine. Yes, I am.
What? What the heck did he just say? He's saying that the sanctions are going to be as harsh as bullets and tanks and I guess aircraft and whatever. The Russians are shooting bullets. Joe Biden's shooting sanctions. Guess who's in trouble now, folks? Old Pooty Poo is probably quivering under his desk right now. So a very weird statement, and you can see Joe Biden, almost even didn't want to take the question, had a difficult time responding to it, but certainly didn't underestimate Putin. Just like Afghanistan was a historic exit. So we can see this episode has already been on repeat. So here is another clip. Joe Biden gets two questions now. The media is not buying the sanctions argument. The sanctions were supposed to deter Putin from going in the first place. He's now going in. You're going to add more sanctions? And Joe, you also just told us that he is not even interested in Ukraine. He's interested in realigning and recreating the Soviet Union. And so you're going to be dealing with somebody who wants to go back to sort of the Cold War era and relive the glory days of the Soviet Union. You're going to just continue to sanction that person? Right? To go back to the parliament guy from the Ukraine, he was saying that there's a lot of analogies here, right? Calling him another sort of modern version Hitler, somebody who's not going to stop at the border. And you take a look at guys like, Chamberlain and others in that era who were meeting with Hitler and reporting back that he was just an amazing guy. Right, so you start to see some of these analogies. Now, sanctions is the word of the day out of the White House. Is it consequential at all? Here's a great question from, I think this might even be CNN.
Cecilia Vega, ABC.
ABC.
Sir, sanctions clearly have not been enough to deter Vladimir Putin to this point. What is going to stop him? How and when does this end? And do you see him trying to go beyond Ukraine And a second question I'll just give to you now. This statement that he gave last night, the threat that he gave, the West will face consequences greater than any you have faced in history. Is he threatening a nuclear strike?
I have no idea
what
he's threatening. I know what he has done.
Great.
And number two, no one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening. It has to show, this is going to take time, and we have to show resolve so he knows what's coming. And so the people of Russia know what he's brought on them. That's what this is all about. This is going to take time. It's not going to occur. He's going to say, oh, my God, these sanctions are coming. I'm going to stand down. He's going to test the resolve of the West to see if we stay together, and we will. We will, and it will impose significant costs on him.
You know, is Putin going to nuke your country? Beats me. I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking. Sure hope not. Not while I'm president. But if he does, well, we're going to be firmly resolved, and we're going to make sure we deal with it because the West is whatever, right? It's the same language that we've heard over the last month. NATO's allied, and we're going to be unified, and Kamala Harris goes over there, and we support our partners. We support our partners is how she talks. And you go, what is with these people? They keep saying the same thing, and Putin just doesn't care. He just doesn't care at all. That's great. You're all unified. You all have this weird party going on. Enjoy yourselves. I'm just going to march on in here and take over the rest of the world. It's pretty embarrassing. Here is another question on sanctions from somebody else in the media. Let's see who this person is.
If sanctions cannot stop President Putin, what penalty can?
I didn't say sanctions couldn't stop him.
You've been talking about the threat of these sanctions for several weeks now.
Yes, but the threat of the sanctions and imposing the sanctions and seeing the effect of the sanctions are two different things.
Oh, you see what they're doing?
They're two different things. And he's going to begin to see the effect of the sanctions.
And what will that do? How will that change his mindset here, given he's attacking Ukraine?
Because it will so weaken his country that he'll have to make a very, very difficult choice as to whether to continue to move toward being a second-rate power or, in fact, respond.
You said in recent weeks that big nations cannot bluff when it comes to something like this. You recently said that the idea of personally sanctioning President Putin was on the table. Is that a step that you're prepared to take? And if not,
it's not a bluff, it's on the table.
Sanctioning President Putin?
Yes.
Why not sanction him today, sir?
Mr. President?
Why not sanction him today?
Mr. President, if I can,
Next
you detailed
question.
some severe and swift new sanctions.
Why couldn't he answer that question? Very good question from that woman. Yeah, why don't you just sanction old Putin over there? Why don't you just cut off all his assets? They haven't done that yet, apparently. So a lot of sanction talk, not a lot of solution talk. And so I was very curious about this. What is the sanction game going to do to Russia? Is this going to be a big thing? Look, we don't know, right? We're just citizens. We just sort of, have to take in what these garbage bureaucrats feed us. And they have these, these stupid little tools they use to tell us that these things are effective. And it's like, it's a bunch of people like pushing paper around, like acting like they're doing stuff, but it's not actually anything. We're going to sanction them. Okay, great. Well, is it consequential or not? Because it doesn't seem like it is, because all of the dictators around the world who've constantly been sanctioned for as long as I've been alive just continue to dictate, as far as I can tell. And so we take a look now at Russia. Very curious about the pipeline network that they've got there. You can see, right, that area that we're talking about, going to highlight this puppy in red. Where is my cursor? There it is. Here, let's do that again. Ukraine is in this area. You can see this sort of highlighted area. The border is Ukraine. A lot of gas pipelines going through there. And we've got several, like this one in purple, which is the Soyuz pipeline system. This one in blue looks like it's the Blue Stream pipeline. We've got number 5, which is the Suez. I can't tell where all these are, right? Different colors, they all blend together. Northern Lights and the Yamal pipeline system. And then what we were really looking at was the Nord Stream 2. This Nord Stream 2 here coming sort of around this one and then working its way down across this region into Germany. A lot of activity, a lot of oil, a lot of it coming from Russia into other parts of Europe, as you can see. Okay, right? See these big tributaries coming here, down here into these other parts, right? My guess is that's oil coming from Russia, kind of not the other way around, right? Are they piping in oil from France and Italy? I don't think so. So yeah, Europe is pretty dependent on a bunch of that oil, I would guess here. And we also ask ourselves about, food Okay, so if Russia is going to be like this independent, siloed country, they're going to be cut off from the rest of the world because Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan, they went back to their Oxford and Harvard pals and they decided that they're going to sanction Putin. All right. And so they decided that they're going to do that. They've got a lot of fuel, right? There's the whole Nord Stream 2, and there's a lot of fuel in Russia. So probably going to be able to heat their houses quite well and stay warm and provide, right? So their population is going to have that going for them. We start thinking about things like food supplies. We have a interesting graphic here. Who buys the Russian and the Ukrainian wheat? I think I had a different slide I wanted to show you first. Yes, this is what I wanted to show you here. This is the top exporters of wheat around the world, all right? And so this is one of those fancy graphics that when I play it is going to show you where the world ends up. And now let's take a look here. In 2000, we see who is the major exporters of wheat around the world. You take a look: US, Canada, France, Argentina, Australia, Germany, UK, Kazakhstan, Turkey, and Belgium. Guess who's not in that list? Russia. Guess who else is not in that list? Ukraine. And so once we fast forward and we're asking about wheat, the top exporters in the world, let's see who rises to the top. Let's see who's got plenty of wheat and arguably a food supply. Let's listen. So here, if I press play, okay, what? Oh, stuff. Oh, look who just jumped onto the board. Russia's now in 5th place. Russia's moving up to 4th. Russia 3rd. Russia's back down to 4th. We've got Ukraine's in the house. Russia is now down in about 5th place, moving up to 4th, and Ukraine's right behind Russia. Russia takes 3rd. Ukraine's moving into 6th. Russia's in number 1. Not even close. Russia's number 1 takes the lead. 2019, Russia becomes the number 1 exporter of wheat around the world as of 2019. And then we have Ukraine, which is in like the 5th position, right? So we see these two places now. Major exporters, US, Canada, and France, take up the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th position. And so there plenty of food, and a lot of people are buying that wheat. You can see if we go to this slide, you can see the entire supply of the wheat is listed over here on the left, and all the different countries in the area are buying it. Now, similarly, right, most of this is not going to Europe. Okay, so that gigantic export problem, right? If Europe cuts them off, who cares, according to them? Because big parts of this supply are going to Egypt, Turkey, Bangladesh. The rest of it is split between African countries. We've got Nigeria, we've got Sudan, we have Thailand, Morocco, South Korea, Spain, Israel's in here. They're all buying the wheat. Guess who's not here? United States, Germany, England, France, UK, Switzerland. None of those countries are there. All right, so cut them off. Who cares? We also see they've got a lot of agricultural land in Ukraine. And so if the Russians actually take Ukraine, well, they got a bunch of new land to do all their farming. They've got exports. Guess who's buying their exports? Okay, Ukraine exports. Guess where those go? Those go to Russia and China. Perfect. Russia's already going to have them. So the other countries are Germany, Poland, Italy, Turkey. So we've got a couple European countries, Germany, Poland, Italy. Let's say they bail out, maybe Turkey too. They still have Egypt, India, and so, they can maybe weather that storm. Also over here, Russia's top exports are all over to China. 14% go to China. After that, you've got Belarus, then you've got Turkey, South Korea, US, Kazakhstan, UK, and Germany, Italy. All right, so we can see that we already went through the exports. We can also take a look at the Black Sea. Now, if Russia takes over Ukraine, they get a big fat new port they're very happy about. Ukraine relies on the Black Sea ports to export agricultural goods around the world. Here, the contested area that we were fighting about in 2014 was Crimea. And now if they take Ukraine, they're going to be able to get these ports here in Odessa and near Moldova. This was the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, right? This is all being basically canceled right now. We saw those other pipelines that are going in different areas. We heard that this is off, but where's Germany getting its fuel from then? Good question. Here, we also heard Joe Biden was going to be, clamping them down in terms of the U.S. dollar. Here, this is another clip from the Geoeconomics Center over from something like the Atlantic Council. Source is from the Bank of Russia, so keep that in mind. Here, this says, you can see the different colors. We are comparing a couple different currencies. We've got the Russian ruble, we've got the US dollar is in green, settlements in the euro, and then other currencies. When Russia exports to China, okay, this is what we're talking about here. What are they settling their exports in? Oh, very interesting. In 2013, all the way up about 2015, all of the settlements were taking place in the US dollar. That started to narrowly tighten after 2015. 2018 comes around. We see a drastic tapering of the settlements. They're not settling their exports in US dollars anymore. They're now settling them in euros. Oh, very interesting. So the US dollar seems like it's less consequential than maybe the euro is. Now, if they put some pressure on the euro or whatever, maybe that still becomes a problem for them. But you can see they're making a hard pivot away from the US dollar. So who knows if those sanctions are going to have any consequence? We'll see. And remember, we're not talking sort of the same game. We're not playing the same game here. One's a game of economics. The other's a game of empire. And empires have different priorities than sanctions and, good exchange rates and things like that. So I think they're playing a little bit of a different game. Joe Biden also exploring other options. What else can they do to push back here against this Russian invasion? ABC or NBC News was reporting that Biden has been presented options for massive cyber attacks against Russia, including disrupting the internet, shutting off power, and stopping trains in their tracks. Biden been presented a number of options. 2 U.S. intelligence officials, one Western intelligence, and another person briefed on the matter say no final decisions have been made. But U.S. and military warriors have been proposing the use of America's cyber weapons on a scale never before contemplated. Can shut off power, stop them from resupplying their forces. You could do everything from slowing the trains down to having them fall off the tracks. Continues on, says sources said the options presented include preemptive responses to the invasion of Ukraine. Many said the potential would be designed to disrupt but not destroy and just harm the networks. One U.S. official said our response will be harsh and measured, but not so severe as to encourage Putin to take more drastic steps. White House didn't respond for comment. Somebody said in a statement, this report is wildly off base and does not reflect what is actually being discussed. That came out from Emily Horn over at the White House. Yeah, I think the White House would need to be concerned about that because recall, the United States hasn't done too well on the most recent cyber attacks that have happened there. Remember, we talked about many of those here on this channel. What was it? The pipeline there near on the East Coast, right? Wasn't that a cyber hack? Not sure the U.S. infrastructure is really built to withstand a cyber war, especially when largely many of the bots and hackers come out of Russia in the first place. All right. And so a lot of questions being bandied about over there at the White House and the Biden administration. What is going to be done? We've heard sanctions for months now, and sanctions were imposed, and Putin did what he did anyways. So we'll see if that matters. But it might. Here is Putin, who came out and addressed a group of his oligarchs today. And hopefully this is translated.
Outside risks and challenges. But inside our country, we have to be more effective and work not according to today's agenda, but tomorrow's agenda too. What I would like to say first, it's the main thing that you have to understand. What is happening? It's something that we were not given any other chances to act otherwise.
No choice.
Risks in the security area. We couldn't react any other way. All our tries it was complete zero. And I would say, and I'm really surprised. We didn't move any further, not even an inch. I want to underline and emphasize that this is not what was basically. It was we had to do it because the risks were really serious for the whole existence of our country. Secondly, we totally understand which world we're living in.
Now, this translator doesn't sound like he's too good, right? He sounds like he's sort of really struggling here. And I don't know if that's because he's like struggling to translate or if because Putin is struggling to talk. Like if Putin's like, kind of struggling. And I mean, if the translation's correct, it sort of sounds like he's kind of like explaining himself. Like I did this big thing. Everybody in the room is pissed at me and like, I know, I'm sorry, like, but listen, like, we had to do this. There's nothing else we could do here. We were out of options. They were going to wreck our country, and so we had no choice. And he's sort of addressing a room that looks like this, a big group of other diplomats or oligarchs or whatever. And it kind of feels to me like he's like explaining himself, right? Like, oh, don't take me out. I had to do it.
We are ready to what's happening at the moment as to sanctions and restrictions. In the end of the day, I just want to say something like it's very important what I'm going to say. I want to react what the Russian Union of Entrepreneurs said. Russia becomes a part of the world economy. And because of that, and we are not going to hurt
Sky
the
News
system that we are part of, that Russia is a part of. We don't do any harm to this system of world economy, which we are a part of. And we are there, and I think our partners should understand that. And do not push us outside of this system. Even of course, some restrictions will happen because of the politics and all the rest of it. And I want to appeal to you and ask you, please understand what's happening and work with solidarity with the government, and we will maintain our economy, our industry, and our workplaces. On behalf of the government and the authorities, of course, I see that task that we will give you good conditions. We provide you more freedom.
All right, so you get the picture here, right? Translators having a little bit of a whoa, he's back. Having a little bit of a tough time, doing the translation here. But I think we get the gist of this. The Putin is out there, sort of, really kind of calming the seas a little bit. Right, everybody's kind of panicking a little bit, saying, "Look, just support the government. We're going to get through this thing. Our economy is going to be fine." Entrepreneurs are talking about, Russia being out there on the global stage. Well, they're not taking us on the global stage. They are trying to wreck our country, and that's why we had to do this, and we're going to be stronger as a result of it. It's kind of that leadership, rah speech. I know it's hurting. I know it's hard, but just keep going, and we're gonna make it through it. It's one of those speeches. But similarly, right, he does seem like he's sort of kind of hunched over a little bit, kind of like he got somebody kind of kicked him in the butt a little bit and said, "Hey, they took my $100 billion and they're not giving it to me." In Canada, they locked down a bunch of the Freedom Convoy protesters. They seized their bank accounts. And here it's happening in Russia, too. Another dictatorship is causing people to lose their funds, Yeah. And so people get upset about that. And when that happens, there are consequences. So old Pooty Poo having to address the crowd. And we have some reaction from other places around the world. Britain came out and they said, "We have always been clear there would be massive consequences and a severe cost for any Russian military." And so today they've got another unprecedented package of further sanctions. So sanctions over from the UK. They wrote a very sternly worded letter that nobody cares about anymore. Here they say the UK and the international community stand against this naked aggression. And the people of Ukraine are in our hearts and minds. All right, that's good. Very nice that they think that. In Putin's Russia, they're arresting anti-war protesters. So same thing that happened in Canada, essentially. People who were anti-government there got arrested, well into the hundreds. Putin did the same thing. Police detain at least 389 anti-war protesters. In Canada, it wasn't anti-war protesters. It was anti-mandate protesters, but same thing. Dictators gonna dictate, as we see. Around the world, Putin's new ally is China. And China earlier this week, even before the invasion started, they were getting their media ducks in a row. You can see that they posted this here. This was an interesting thing that happened a couple days ago. So this would have been on Tuesday, the 22nd. This came out. Apparently, this was detailed censorship instructions were leaked out by one of the Chinese media entities. So the dissemination of reports was mistakenly linked. This account is called the Shimian account. It belongs to Beijing News. And so they posted this. and so obviously I don't read Mandarin, but so-and-so refers to presumably the People's Daily, the Xinhua Agency, and CCTV. Okay, so look, this is what happened. This is a memo that came out on, in China, and a China entity called Beijing News posted this online. And it's a memo that is saying how to censor the news. And so this guy apparently can translate for us. He says Beijing News in their social media account accidentally posted its own censorship orders from high up. It details ban on posts that are, quote, not positive towards Russia or positive towards the West. Okay, so like here, we'll break that down. If it's not positive towards Russia, don't post it. So if it's negative towards Russia, you're not allowed to post that. You're also not allowed to post anything that is positive towards the West. Okay, so in other words, they're not going to be sort of cheerleading for Russia, but they are going to be stopping anything that is not positive. All user comments must be carefully screened and slowly posted. And that's the new order that came out from the CCP in China. Now, we have a similar order in the United States media, because you'll notice that this came out on February 22nd. We had a similar order come out from our own communist media. Here, CBS News posted this also on February 22nd. And so this new talking point that came out even before the invasion started from CBS is that the U.S. economy has been hit with increased gas prices, inflation, and supply chain issues due to the Ukraine crisis. All right. So this talking point was already spreading around 2 days ago, that the economy is going to be having big problems now because of the crisis. There was no invasion. Putin didn't even sign the order back on February 22nd. And so increased gas prices, inflation, and supply chain issues. So you can see when you have an opportunity to exploit a crisis, you're going to want to make sure you do that. And here is a good one. And so all of the economic hardship, all of the other things that nobody in the media wants to talk about as it relates to the crumbling Biden administration, now going to conveniently have something to talk about. Probably not even going to have time to talk about the Freedom Convoy or anything like that either, right? Because now it's all Ukraine. It's war porn everywhere you turn. Everything, whether there's new information that is coming out from the CDC or from the FDA. Now we can not talk about things like Ghislaine Maxwell. We can all talk about Ukraine and talk about the never-ending war. And let's see what you have to say about this from our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and see if we had any. Oh, yeah, and so this was a good juncture point. So remember this video? I was talking about this video before we jump into your comments. This was the video of I was talking about earlier this week. This kind of felt a lot like what the West was doing and screaming at Putin. And then this is sort of what Putin was doing. Okay, so the cat is Putin. And the woman behind the camera is going to be the West screaming at Putin. Okay, so watch.
No. Get him, no.
No. That's Putin. Yeah, he did it. Yeah, he just did it. Oh, man. Yeah, so obviously I don't think Putin is thug life or a good person for doing what he did. But that's essentially what happened there. I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. All right, let's see. We've got some questions that came in and some comments. So we're going to do a refresh on this. Let's see if there is anything here. There is. All right. And so we've got some questions that came in over on YouTube. Let's get to those. We had a super chat that came in. Berry Cream. No, wait, that was yesterday. Do we get it? Oh, we may not have gotten any super chat. All right, so let's see what else we have over here on locals. We've got one here. News Now says, I'm really hoping you're going to bring up former presidential candidate John Kerry's comments about being worried about how this battle and the effects will have on CO2 emissions, and didn't mention the loss of innocent lives. So I did not actually even see that. News Now. Where might that be? Let's see. I think I might know where I can find that. Let's see if CFP has it. Yes, here's a John Kerry clip. Here is the clip I think News Now is talking about. Let's watch this. So John Kerry.
I'm very concerned about Ukraine because of the people of Ukraine and because of the principles that are at risk in terms of international law and trying to change boundaries of international law by force. I thought we lived in a world that had said no to that kind of activity, and I hope diplomacy will win. But massive emissions consequences to the war, but equally importantly, you're going to lose people's focus. You're going to lose certainly big country attention because they will be diverted, and I think it could have a damaging impact. So, I think hopefully President Putin would realize that in the northern part of his country, they used to live on 66% of a nation that was over frozen land. Now it's thawing, and his infrastructure is at risk, and the people of Russia are at risk. And so I hope President Putin will help us to stay on track with respect to what we need to do for the climate.
Man, he looks rough. So, all right, so that's an interesting thing. Climate change is going to be a big issue.
And this work is broader.
Oh, come on. Is that Jen? Oh, stop. All right, let's go back here. Let's see. We've got another question that came in here from, It's Ed. Says, Rob, this is scary comical. Where are all the people that cried about Trump possibly causing World War III by going to war with Russia when Trump won the nomination? Why aren't the same people denouncing Biden for letting this happen? It's a great point. It's kind of interesting, right? It seems like a lot of the Democrats are very pro-war now, right? I noticed that. I've noticed that a lot of people are saying, Tucker Carlson is just shilling for Putin. And then everybody else on the other side is really sort of screaming for war. Like we're all going to just jump on the go to war train and go fight for democracy. Where were you idiots when they were wrecking democracy here at home? Now suddenly we want everybody to jump on the train and cart off to Ukraine. It's wild. Says under Obama, they annexed Crimea. Under Trump, Russia stayed in line. Biden comes in, Russia invades Ukraine. Almost seems like Crimea was annexed for a purpose. Hitler annexed Czechoslovakia and used their manufacturing abilities to build their war machines. Specifically, the majority of their tanks came from said region. Now Putin is using this newly annexed area as a staging post for their advancement. Why are people refusing to acknowledge this? Trump had balls, no one pushed him. Putin is a weenie and the world is walking all over him. Biden is a weenie and the world is walking all over him. I can't believe anyone voted for this loser. I know it's pretty wild, right? And a lot of the people, so I know people who did vote for him, and I'm still talking to them and looking at them and saying, how about this performance, huh? And they're going, I know. I know it's bad. And it's weird, right? You're probably talking to people about that. And they're probably having the same reaction. Peely Wally says the hypocrisy with the U.S. and the UK is crazy. We went into Iraq for no good reason twice. Russia does what it wants, as do the U.S. and the UK. Yeah, right. I think there's truth to that. Putin knows the West isn't going to do anything about it. Heather's 3 Girly says that Ukrainian woman is one tough bird. I really hope more have her spirit. It's true about that, right? It's true. Those people who go out there and they look at, my super chats are not working today. Why are they not showing up on the screen? I'm irritated about this. What's happening here? So I saw a super chat come in and it's not showing up. It's not popping up. And I don't know what that's all about. So I apologize. So that's what the problem is. All right, anyways. I'll be able to read them now. So JJ Clem said Canadian dictator is blocking RT News. They said Putin is a dictator. Oh my God, Canada's a joke. Captain Jim, I'm sorry, not the people. I love the Canadian people. I feel terrible for the Canadian people. Justin Trudeau is a joke, is what I should have said. Captain Jim says, hey Rob, what a day. I actually have relatives in both countries too. Well, Art, we're praying for him, Captain Jim says. Anyway, the lady confronting the Russian soldier told him to put sunflower seeds in his pocket. That way, sunflowers will grow when he dies on their soil. Sucks all around. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. Prayers for your family out there, Captain Jim. Facts Matter says, Rob, poor Hunter may lose his Ukraine cash cows. If Joe fights hard on the ground, it's because Putin may expose Hunter's dirt. There is a lot of history there. Monster One says, can't wait until they impeach the person responsible, Donald Trump. I can't believe Donald Trump did this. Can you believe this? He's causing World War III in real time. And he's not even president. That's how evil he is. That's why he must be stopped. Letitia James. We have It's Ed says, WTF, Germany depends on Russian natural gas. You really think they're going to sanction Russia? Is Biden insane? Wait, don't answer that. We'll see. We'll see, right? So I've seen a lot of these. I didn't clip it. I should have clipped it, but I'm seeing sort of backpedaling from some of the financial people saying, hold on a minute. We can't just do all these sanctions, Joe. We have to heat our own houses. Hand of Nod is here, says Rob, as Cain told his many disciples, peace through power. I dearly want to beat a dead horse about how the world arrived at today. It's done. People made a choice about who would lead the West. Biden's impeccable tailoring is insufficient to dissuade Russia or China. I suspect the entire cabinet and JCOF, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, are perceived abroad as laughable. Impeachment or 25th don't really improve the hot mess. I agree with Post Sobek on at least one response. Russia is an energy economy, relying on exports of oil and natural gas. The U.S. could implement policy changes and reinvigorate our economy. This becomes a war of supply. We drive the cost of oil so low, LNG so low, that the Russian economy implodes far more than mere sanctions could manage. Worth mentioning that Russia chose to go to war after Germany was hostage to heating needs and the U.S. unable to lift the burden, whereas in 2019, U.S. was net exporting. Maintain vigilance. Hand of Nod. That comes across, and Captain Jim says, word on that one. Yeah, very good comment. Jules C. says, Tsar Bomba, boom. And I think Jules C. also on YouTube had 2 of those comments. So I'll say it again later. We have another one from Vientikis. Biden said, the people of Russia know what he brought on them. Dissect that one for a minute. Look, there's a lot of ways to dissect that. And it's hard to gauge this, right? I sort of look at this as an apple and oranges conversation. Joe Biden and the left and many people in the West, they want to have an apples conversation. That's not at all what Putin wants to have. He wants to have a orange conversation. And if you're trying to have conversations about 2 different things, thinking you're getting somewhere, you're not. And we're not. That's why the thumbnail on the show today is futility, because for some reason, they think they're having a conversation with Putin that is not happening. We have another one from It's Ed says, yeah, but let's be honest, Rob, this wheat isn't organic. Oh, yeah. Wait, you mean countries don't give a flip about organic wheat when you're starving? Who would have thought about? That's true, yeah. Yeah, the granola crunchers over at Berkeley, they don't want that wheat. Okay, it's not free range, organic, free roaming, cage free wheat. That's the only type of wheat that they'll eat. That could be a jingle. Free range, farm free, cage free wheat. Brian Hack is here, says LMAO, Russia is invading Ukraine. Canada is fighting itself. And this American and another American are arguing the position of never eating humans and possibly eating humans if society collapses. I'm on side never. However, pineapple goes on everything. Listen, Brian. We're not going to get into the pineapple on pizza argument. It's going to devolve into that at some point. We'll save that for World War IV. First name, last name says, great job today with the breakdown of the export and import through Rusky. Very informative. We're all screwed. That's from first name, last name. So thank you for that one, first name, last name. Yeah, it's interesting to think about this sort of from a different lens, through the economics lens. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I had fun looking through all of that. There are some really great threads on Telegram, by the way. We're on Telegram. My discussion forum, I don't even know what to call it. My channel, I think is what you call it on Telegram, is not, very good. I'm working on it. But there's a really good one. Indisclosed TV has a good one. What are some of the other ones that I'm following? Disclosed TV has a really good one. Let's see here. Truckers for Freedom is another one. Project Veritas is on there. Yeah, the one that I've really been I've been really enjoying is Disclosed.tv. They've got a lot of good stuff on Ukraine. All right, we had another one in from Jay. Says, thank you, Robert, and the watchers. Another question. Thank you, Jay. Salt. He gave us a salt emoji. So salty? I don't know if he's saying I'm salty. I might be. It could be true. Stefania Moore says, are you worried about how China is going to look at us now? I think there's some real, consequence there. And I think that the Chinese would love the ability to go and sort of do the same thing with Taiwan. I think that is probably a thing that is being talked about right now. No doubt about that. Great question from Stefania Moore. Magdalene F says, at least you can make me laugh. It's still great to have humor in these uncertain times. Look, I think, yes, it is a horrific, terrible situation, but we also got to keep context to this thing. I think a big part of how the establishment maintains power over people is they make you think that every single thing that happens in the world is your problem, when really it is not your problem, right? Most of our problems are local, and they are able to engage us emotionally by dragging us into everybody else's, every single conflict, right? You have to be emotionally invested in everything. Got to open the New York Times and, wow, I got to drop everything and go help this current crisis. Well, unfortunately, right, as a matter of just practicality, many of us just don't have the ability to go out and impact the world, right? We can sit here and we can commiserate and we can support people with our money and our resources and our votes, and we can build our own communities. But, again, I'm still having a real hard time sort of, understanding why the United States needs to be involved in every single global conflict and the solution to every single global problem when we have our own problems here that have been ignored by our own leaders and politicians for most of my life, right? And we're sort of running out of bandwidth to be able to solve everything for everybody until we get our own affairs in order. Woke War 3 is here from Jules Z. So that's true, right? NATO and the woke Marines are very interested in pronouns and sort of making sure that there's enough diversity for everybody. And I think those are the super chats. Thank you for those. We had another one coming in from Paul Gregg here on Local. Says, Rob, the world versus Putin. How about neocons, neoliberals, Western plutocracies versus Russia and China and India? That's probably more accurate. Yeah, I mean, I was sort of pressed for time on that, but that's definitely more accurate. I think that's true. That's from Paul Gregg. Brian Hack is here, says, a good meme that showcases India, one of the world's oldest constant empires. Air traffic controller says, avoid the area. There's a war on. And Air India says, Leroy Jenkins. And so you can see India apparently is just flying right over Ukraine, whereas the rest of the air traffic is not. Leroy Jenkins is a good meme, of course. Sometimes I'll Leroy Jenkins right into issues and right into, things, and sometimes it works out, sometimes not. Here is another one, a good joke. Destination, Helsinki. Occupation? No, just visiting. Oh, you get it? He's asking for his occupation. Like, are you a dictator? No, just visiting. Not going to occupy at this time. Here, former LEO says, it sounds like Putin is using mean words, incorrect pronouns, and microaggressions. Somebody get the Secretary of Defense, Darth Vader, out from under his bed so he can put away those bad words. And let's do a quick refresh over here. A couple others came in from YouTube. Jules C. says Trudeau for prison, which we'll see if that happens. That would be not a bad thing, because he is a little dictator over there. And another one, Woke War 3 over on Locals. Let's see. Super chat in case you missed it. Greg Murat. Greg, I still have your thesis in my inbox. I'm going to look at it. Says, do you think Putin will also capture Moldova next? Because that's where the Western NATO border ends. In Romania. Also, read Taiwan warns Chinese aircraft in the defense zone. Maybe it's nothing, but who knows at this stage. I think that's true. I've seen a lot of headlines about that. News Now says, don't worry, the president is going to wag his finger at China next to keep them in line. Yeah, so not so sure how that's going to work out. They've been doing a lot of finger wagging, and it's not working out anywhere they turn. I'm Not Gas says, and to close out my tirade, did we miss a tirade? Oh, here it is. So I'm Not Gas is here, says, if everyone is a Nazi, no one is a Nazi. So after Hitler, Bush was Hitler 2, then Trump was Hitler 3, then Assad was Hitler 4. No, wait, Saddam was Hitler 3, then Putin is Hitler 5 or Hitler 8, I don't know. But Putin is Hitler fighting Azov Battalion, who are neo-Nazis, but Russia are Nazis, invading the Sudetenland. But Trump is Hitler simultaneously while Trudeau and Putin are Hitler. Can we stop with this everything is Hitler and Nazi crap, he says? It's like a giant mind virus making people unable to say anything besides myopic, brain-dead takes on politics. Well, I'm not gassed. That sounds like something Hitler would say. Honestly, it sounds like a dictator would say something like that. So you better watch it. I'm just kidding. He says, and to close out my tirade, we should all remember when masters fight, slaves bleed. Yeah, they're not going to war. All these people who are out there on MSNBC or wherever, Tucker Carlson is Putin's sock puppet, right? You can go fight those wars for all I care. Monster One says, Rekieta canceled his stream last night and Russia invades. Coincidence? I think not. Put didn't get his unbreaded and revolted. I'm still not up to speed on the breaded, unbreaded thing. I don't know which is better or what it means, and at this point, I'm too afraid to ask. Georgia Peaches says, Rob, was that Dr. Dre that cat was dancing to? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Dr. Dre. Yeah. Thug life, man. C. Reed says, Rob, just an update on the David Dadling case, which should be the biggest news in history, but the mainstream media will not challenge it. Would love to see a mind map on this, or at least your take on it. David Dadling. Who is this? I remember this name. Which guy is this? Is this the Chevron? What just happened here? I think I just minimized every single screen that I have. And so are we still broadcasting? We are still broadcasting. I hit that minimize everything button. Ugh, that didn't work out very well. All right, here we go. We're back. So we'll take a look at that, C. Reed. We got that one from I'm Not Gas. We have this one here as a blast from the past in Ukraine. This is from Vientikis. And so, yeah, we can see some of this stuff. Oh, look who this is.
Succeeded not because of equipment, but because of your courage.
Oh. So interesting. We're back here again. I'm Not Gas says, my Geiger counter is ticking. A nuke just flew over my house. Georgia Peaches says, hey, Rob, at this old age, I'm learning so much more from you than I did in 4 years of college. Even when they still use books and most professors were anti-government. You've got such a talent. Keep me interested and entertained. I have 2 friends that are quite liberal that listen to you fairly frequently. Now that's talent, Rob. Keep up the great work. And thanks for the Eminem intro. Well, thank you, Georgia Peaches. So that's a really nice, huge compliment. And I also want to give a shout out to my lovely Aunt Linda. She says she listens to me, and we have some disagreements on politics out there, but she listens too. And so I love my liberal friends who listen to the show. I really appreciate it. Look, I think that we have a lot more in common than not in common, right? Like the parties keep changing for some reason, but if you're anti-war, the liberals used to be anti-war. And for some reason, it doesn't sound like they are anymore I don't know. All right. And so we've got a couple others before we wrap it up for the day. Let's do a quick refresh over here. We check over on YouTube. First name, last name says Biden for dog catcher. That's a lot of work. You got to be able to move and walk upstairs and things. I'm not sure that he can handle that. We have another one from 05 Redrex. Number 1 says, what brands of polo shirts are you wearing on the stream? It's a good question. This is a Travis Matthew shirt. There's another brand that I also like, and I can't remember the name of it. Oh, Grayson. The other collared shirts are the Grayson shirts. They're very good. If you're here in Arizona, there's a woman I recommend her. She has a store at 32nd Street and Camelback, I think, Indian School. Q Contrary Mary. She's amazing. She helps me because I'm clueless with clothes and most things that involve style. And so she helps me with that stuff. She's amazing. A couple other questions came in. Georgia Peaches, did I miss another comment from you or did I get that one? Let me check real quick. Let's do a check on this. Make sure I don't miss any of these. And while that's loading, we'll go back up to the top. 503 says, it's springtime for Hitler. All joking aside, it's pretty sad. A person wouldn't be able to remake the producers these days. How far we have fallen. And so let's check one more over here from Georgia Peaches. Make sure we got all of these. I think we did, my friends. I think that is it for the day. And I'm checking some of the chats. Let's check over on Rumble to my Rumble friends over there. And I think that is it, my friends, for the day. And so I want to thank everybody for being a part of the show. What did I do with the rest of my slides? One more reminder to join us over here on the join button. If you want to be a member, don't forget to subscribe before you get out of here. Big shout outs to the Spotlight supporters. These are the people who just really send some extra love to the show. We give them a little bit extra love here on this slide. And if you're somebody who, wants to kind of advertise a name or a logo or a social media profile or a, link to your business or a nonprofit, you can do that by supporting the show at the highest tier membership on YouTube or an equal tier on Locals, and we'll get you added to this slide. Just shoot me a message. Really, really appreciate your support. Shout outs to Mr. J Bug, Mr. Blue Bunny. We got Ricky Bishop, Henry Dixon, Kareem165, Timber Traveler. Big shout outs to everybody here. Words Mean Things, Charjan, Bossy B, Jay Pearson, Hot Rod Roommate, D Sensei. We've got Ray KOK, Max Webster, Braveheart29, D Mac Boston, Huck G, Ultra Fragile, Freedom for All. We have Gamers Complete, Miss ESC, Jennifer Delman, Kim So, Roadrunner 60, Little Red Rose, P. Tatum, Miss Marplewise, Facts Matter, and Ask Why on this Saturday, February 26th at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. If you're a supporter over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, we've got a monthly meetup that is taking place. It's on Zoom, ultra high security. Now you got to log in, and if you join us, we'll spend about an hour and a half talking with each other. It's a lot of fun when we get to connect. Wolfgang Deo says, any thoughts on what we can do if people try to terrorize the Freedom Convoy donors? I categorically deny the Washington Post journalist saying I donated to BLM. Keck. That's from Wolfgang Deo. Well, look, if you're being harassed, I would just look into filing an injunction against harassment in your local state. If you think you're being or something similar, an order of protection, typically pretty easy to file. And so that would be my thought on that one, Wolfgang Deo, although there is no legal advice on that show. To consult with your local attorney for the advice on that. And I want to thank all the tremendous mods in the house. I really do appreciate all of your work. Vientikis, we've got K Bean I'm looking at. We've got Just Cause. I see Zulu's back in the house. I know Henry Dixon's in the house. And there are many others who I'm not seeing right now, but I want to thank everybody for keeping the things under control. It is very, very much appreciated. And that, my friends, is it for us today. We're going to be back here tomorrow to do it all again. 4 p.m. Arizona, 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody else have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye, my friends.